Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Okay, hello again. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Guerilla Sports. We're in a different location than we were like 20 minutes ago when you last saw us. It's because we have some surprising breaking news here, Megan. Our last show was literally titled Avs, like finalized roster, Avs, cut down the roster. I got DMAC calling me right now, probably wondering what the F is going on.
What the heck?
The Avs, minutes after we wrap our show, Megan, send out the email announcing that what we thought was a finalized roster based on our counting this morning, the Avs have reduced the roster by 9 additional players. TJ Tynan, who had previously cleared waivers, reassigned to the Eagles. Andre Pavel, reassigned to the Eagles. Ivan, reassigned to the Eagles, who was skating on what we assumed to be the fourth line today. Nikolai Kovalenko, skating on what was dressed as the second line today, reassigned to the Colorado Eagles. I know you're trying to make sense of this as quickly as I am, but Megan, your initial thoughts on this, I genuinely don't know what to make of it right now.
Sorry, there's one thing I need to look up.
Okay, you're good. While you're doing that, I'll keep talking here. Look, the reason that we're doing this as an emergency pod is because we were out at practice today, and we just did a podcast about 20 minutes ago. And everything at practice, from line rushes to just the sheer numbers, added up with saying this is the roster. That I believe it was 23 guys that we counted out there this morning was under the 24 player maximum. And we were saying, okay, well, there you go. The Avs are done. Ivan makes the cut, at least out of the gate. Nikolai Kovalenko, who maybe had the strongest and most consistent preseason, makes the cut. Nikolai Kovalenko with an AHL out clause in his deal. I thought it was pretty much safe bet to say that the players that we saw on the ice were who was going to be on the roster on Wednesday for that season opener. Looks like that's not going to be the case unless this is some type of salary cap maneuvering, financial maneuvering. It does not appear that way to me, though.
Well, here's what makes it interesting. Chris Wagner was placed on waivers and cleared, and then played in the Utah game, which already felt a little bit odd. I don't know that Chris Wagner plays on Wednesday. It might be the flexibility of setting this roster for cap purposes until Wednesday, but now having a player like Ivan and Kovalenko who don't need to pass through waivers that can be reassigned, and Wagner can very easily be reassigned.
Yep.
At this point.
I guess here's my question, though. What salary cap maneuvering is this doing?
I'm not sure I understand what they're waiting to do in setting this roster today that they wouldn't just do now instead of tomorrow or Wednesday.
Right.
That's what I don't fully understand.
For everyone in the chat who's saying it's obvious and clear a cap move, please explain to me what the cap move is, because I don't. Again, I'm not even saying that that's incorrect. I don't get where you're getting the benefit from.
I'm trying to think of what the difference would be, because right now it's only 11 forwards.
It's not for the guys going on LTIR. There's 4 players not on the active roster right now, and that includes Gabe Landeskog, Arturi Lehkonen, and Tucker Poolman.
What does it put their cap hit at right now?
So those players are already not on the active roster. So if your thought is, well, they got to send these guys down because they have to go into the season with Landeskog and Lehkonen, that is not correct. So guess again.
What if they're adding something?
That's the only thing that comes to my mind, is if there's a player that they are bringing in. Because again, we see these types of moves, around the deadline and stuff like that all the time. But again, to your point, Megan, why would you waive Chris Wagner then keep him around instead of just keeping Kovalenko around? Like, if this is for cap maneuverability, they've chosen a really funny way of going about it.
Well, and I've always gone back and forth in what I believe in terms of the better chances in sending a player through waivers. And it probably was better in their eyes to do this with Wagner now than to wait, and just to give them the flexibility in the near future, if that makes sense. Like, why to do it now if just to keep him? But it does strike me as a bit odd. It feels like there's a reason behind it.
Right.
And I don't know that it points to Chris Wagner has undeniably solidified a spot.
He wasn't
on
even
the
out
roster.
there today. Right? I didn't miss him, right?
No. It's very odd.
It's just odd. Again, if this is... I'm actually shooting a message right now. And so again, if this truly is for salary cap purposes, there's a lot of finagling going on there.
And I know that this is a team that's been unafraid to, down to the daily relief, make these types of moves, even if it's just something that is a day's worth of relief. And in bringing on someone into the front office who specializes in cap, I'm hoping and betting that it's something we're not familiar with, but I can't place what it would be, what the benefit of this would be.
Well, and especially the benefit of doing it, again, if this is really something cap related. If this is a reassignment of Ivan and Nikolai Kovalenko, I'm shocked.
That's what I find hard to believe.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe. Well, Ivan, I think we always knew he had the flexibility. So at this point, I thought he made the opening night roster. But prior to today, I'd at least thought he's earned himself a quick call-up opportunity, the short list of guys who get the first call-up.
Yep.
But Kovalenko is what I think is most surprising. They have been utilizing him in a second-line role through much of these playoffs, in giving him opportunity.
Yes.
Wow. in these preseason games alongside top-line talent. And he has looked comfortable there. So I'm just not sure what the point of it was then. What he could have done differently with that opportunity.
And again, if this truly is so Arif Dean just tweeted, here's the Avs official season opening roster. Ivan and Nikolai Kovalenko were among the paper transaction roster cuts to maximize salary cap LTIR use, is what Arif is saying. But again, to maximize salary cap LTIR use?
That would...
Again, if that's truly what they're doing, the way that they've chosen to go about doing it with players that are with the team versus players not with the team on paper right now does not make any sense to me. I fired off 2 messages. I'm
okay. Like, is there benefit in knowing Lekkonen's timeline a little bit more? Like, he's probably within a window where he could be moved to LTIR. And is there some benefit in like waiting to place him on LTIR by a couple of days?
Well, see, but again, in what we were told,
like, does it buy them more time after that? Like, the clock then starts once he's on LTIR officially. From this point on, they get the regular season opening, not official season opening IR, but the IR relieved, and then they add on LTIR after that period?
again, like you said, Corey Massasak from the Denver Post, who I know knows what he's talking about. Again, like there's a lot of people saying paper transactions, things like that, but again, you chose less than $2 million worth of players to do that with, while keeping a guy like Chris Wagner around who has already cleared waivers. I'm not doubting that it's paper transactions, but this just does not make any sense. Question that just came into the chat: do they have to pass through waivers? No, neither of those players have to go through waivers.
I guess why not just, if Wagner has cleared waivers and this is all paper transactions, why not also just have Wagner reassigned to
I
Eagles
just had a
camp?
friend text me and said, Jonathan Taves? ? No, probably not Jonathan Taves. Say that again. Sorry.
Why not just have Wagner also report to Eagles camp if this is
Right.
down to the day cap relief kind of thing?
And that's my thought with it too. Had we just seen a large group of players reassigned, okay, it's the Wagner part of it that is really
It's
messing
the Wagner
me up.
of it all.
It's the Wagner of it all. Yeah. And again, I apologize. This isn't like outstanding podcasting, but we're trying to figure this out right along with you guys. Because, I mean, this was a move where we were actually sitting at the desk recording some other content, and this came in, and we decided to do this. And it was strictly because I couldn't confidently say this was a no doubt slam dunk paper transaction. I know that's what people are saying, and Corey makes a good point that unless there's something that changed in Jared Bednard's mind in the last 2 hours, then I would be surprised. So again, I just find it funny. At bare minimum, if nothing else, it's a weird way of doing it. Viper JL. That's what Puckpedia was saying. Just a weird way of doing it.
Has LTR already taken place? Is that?
So, and this is the other part that's throwing me off about this. The Avs, in their official release of these moves, have Gabe Landeskog, Arturi Lehkonen, Tucker Poolman, and Val Nichushkin all listed as not part of the active roster. So, again, I'm not doubting what Corey is saying, what Arif is saying, that it's a paper transaction, that they'll be back. But man, this is the weirdest way to play in the cap game.
Yeah, and it's still the Wagner of it all.
It's still
Why
the
not
Wagner.
just have?
Did you look up what his cap hit is? Because there's a bunch of people asking that as well.
I think it's 800 or 775. Let's see.
Love you, Zach. That's who texted me.
About Taves.
Yeah. 775. And I guess so are Ivan and Nikolai Kovalenko more than that?
I think they're right around 800. Ivan, 845.
Okay.
And Kovalenko, 896.
Okay.
That's a decent amount
So you're talking
more.
about $100,000. Talking about $100,000 difference. And if they're truly sitting at $44K under the cap, then I guess that makes sense. But this seems like a super roundabout way of doing that.
Why not just give yourself the Wagner relief too? That's what I don't understand.
right,
Is there some rule I'm missing about that?
That you have to have a minimum number of players, because they still would have been over 20 because they had 8 defensemen.
Yeah, it's just 20. You just have to be 20 or above.
It'd be 20 or more. So why not reassign Wagner as well if there's truly no interest in keeping him and he's just going to be switched out for the other players?
I look back to when they extended him last year in April, and I just wonder if we've undervalued the way the organization feels about Chris Wagner through all of this.
Yeah. Here's an interesting comment. Apparently it helps to get as close to the cap as possible. So apparently this finagling, the reason why they wouldn't get rid of Wagner as well is because you want less money, but not all the money. This is really bizarre. This is super bizarre. A different Zach, not my friend Zach, predicting Sidney Crosby in the chat. Let's just, in the chat, fill it up with all of your wildest predictions for why the Avs are doing it this way. See, now again, I'm seeing people talking about accruing space. I didn't think the Avs were in position to accrue space this year. Maybe what this is a lesson in is that I need to understand the cap more, or the cap needs to be less confusing. I had this conversation last year because have you seen what the NBA did to their salary cap?
No.
It's a mess. There's tiers. You can be in like the A tier of the salary cap, or you can be in like the B tier. It's a mess. And I did this whole show this summer about how these salary caps are just too confusing. There's too many weird rules and stuff like this. And if this is truly what you're having to do because you've got two players that you know are going in LTI plus a player that's suspended, it's just too confusing. So I've got a couple different texts out to folks who I think can help shed some light on this. I haven't heard back yet. Are you comfortable writing this off as these are likely just cap moves and we're going to see these guys back come Wednesday? Or are you at all concerned that they change their mind and we're not going to see them on Wednesday? Kovalenko's the one that I feel the most convinced he'll be back. I'm not sure on Ivan.
I'm not sure on Ivan, but now I think I'm beginning to understand the purpose of being closer to the cap, because then with the LTIR relief, it's allowed above that point. So it just kind of gives them an extra option for a player like under that cap floor before the LTIR overage kicks in. And that's where I could see them, Kovalenko fits in there pretty easily. I don't know that there's a need for Ivan. Like, they'll just need 12 forwards for opening night. And so I don't know that there's a need for him come that time. But I still think he's on the short list. I don't think that this is an indictment of Ivan or Kovalenko.
Right.
I really want to caution people against feeling that way about it.
Yeah. Kovalenko's the one that, again, you know, folks, like I'm happy to admit when I don't know everything, and clearly there's some NHL salary cap stuff that I'm not super privy to. But Kovalenko is the one that I would be surprised, Megan, if he wasn't back in the NHL, even if not on opening night, very, very quickly. This is a player that has written his contract. If he spends an amount of time in the American Hockey League he doesn't like, he'll head back to the KHL. Like, he has no problem doing that. So I imagine he'll be back, but I'm going to caution people in both directions. I wouldn't necessarily hit the panic button and say that they're not going with these two young players. But in this exact moment, I also wouldn't write it off as a slam dunk. These players will be back by Wednesday. This is an interesting move here, Megan.
I'm not buying that we don't see Ivan make an NHL debut soon, too. I don't know that it comes in time for opening night, but he will be back. He'll make an NHL debut. If Pavel and Poland got NHL debuts and they found games for Foodie and Olausen last year, they're going to find a game for Ivan to make an NHL debut.
I hope it's Wednesday. We saw him out there, and like, you know, it was funny because we were even in the locker room. We were like, should we go talk to a couple of these guys about making the team? And we were like, we'll wait a couple days. Good thing we didn't. And as a lot of people are saying in the chat and even you know, on Twitter, the assumption is that these are paper transactions, just having to make sure that everything fits right. But again, they did not have to. I'm not going to get into this argument with people. They didn't have to do it to be cap compliant. It sounds like there's some very specific choices that are being made with these two players in particular to get to where they needed to be. This wasn't the only option. It's part of why it seemed so confusing. And let's also be honest, like, these are both bubble guys. You know, like, going into all of this, these are both guys who we thought were on the cusp, could make the roster. That's why this is plausible to me, Megan, that this is legitimate because these were not by no means slam dunk NHL roster guys.
Kovalenko?
Ivan more than Kovalenko, but I think you wanted to see it from Kovalenko too. Right?
I think, the talk has been consistent that he's emerged among the forward options. And I think Bednar's pretty transparent about that type of thing. He doesn't say things like that for no reason, and he doesn't consistently say it for no reason. I wouldn't even classify Kovalenko on the fringe anymore. And I actually feel like I was most critical of him coming into this season in expecting some time in the American League. So I say that to eat crow a little bit. But I can feel more confident in saying I don't think he's really even on the fringe so much in terms, or in the eyes of the front office.
So with him, fair to think that this is a paper transaction.
That's where I'm getting a little bit bold. I really do feel that way.
Ivan, probably a paper transaction.
But they can afford for it not to be and still get him an NHL debut later.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Lekkonen's timeline being what it is, they have runway through October to give Ivan a chance. It doesn't have to be as soon as this Wednesday in Vegas.
There's someone here who has capologist and LTIR expert in their bio. It says when you put a player on long-term injury reserve, your salary cap is no longer $88 million. Your new salary cap is called ACSL. There are two ways to calculate it depending on when you place your player. This is already too confusing, going back to what we were just saying. The basic here is that all unused cap space disappears when you set your ACSL. Colorado is now below the salary cap. They are as close as possible to the salary cap. When they will place a player on LTIR tomorrow, they will set their ACSL. Did you get all that? Because I didn't.
I guess what I want to know is why did they have to do this tomorrow? Why couldn't they do this today?
Right.
In one fell swoop.
And again, it's the additional part of them listing that those players are already inactive. That they're that the release makes it seem like they're not part of the lineup. They're not part of the roster already.
I hate that it doesn't give you a distinction though as to how they're not a part of it. Like it tells us injured versus suspended, but it doesn't tell us like this player is going to be put on LTIR. This player's just on regular IR.
Right. And then it says, imagine. Okay, so maybe this will help. I don't know. Imagine a credit card that wipes out the entirety of what you have in your bank account if you begin to use the credit card. You would want your account as close as possible to zero before using your credit card. So, again.
Or is that like max debt?
It's a reply. It says, what this tweet says makes sense, but not understanding how this works with the cap. When you put a player on LTIR, your salary cap is no longer da-da-da-da-da. Again, it's the wording of the release that we got. Players that are inactive. It's all these moves being made at once, and it's the players who have remained that I think are adding to the confusion, at least for me. So I think we've talked through it with everybody. I think we can chalk it up to let's wait 24 hours and see.
Well, yeah, because Tucker Pullman, you can count on it. Feels pretty easy.
Right.
Just kind of confused, like, has it happened?
Right. Interesting.
Kovalenko will be back.
This is why I pay someone to do my taxes. Yeah, seriously.
You do taxes?
Pay taxes? What's that?
What is that?
Kovalenko will be back. one way or the other, I feel fairly confident saying that.
Yeah.
Ivan, I don't know.
He'll be back in a different way. I can't say when as definitively.
So, and again, this is the part that's just killing me. And I guess, again, if the math is exactly right, it makes sense. But why keep Wagner? I guess we're just spinning in circles at this point. Here's one from Andrew S. I'm an accountant, and this is frustrating for me to understand.
Thank you, Andrew, because we probably look foolish.
Well, no, I don't think we do. I think this is what's going through a lot of people's minds. And I think it would be easy to be like, oh, those are paper transactions. They'll be back. But there was a lot here that I thought.
I think Hurricane Teabags got, I think that's, okay, so the credit card thing, I think instead of it being as close to 0, I think it's like as close to your line of credit max.
Max, yeah. So, all right, so here's maybe how we wrap all this up because of what you said at the start. Brings up a related question. How many people do the Avs have on staff that manages cap-related items? They made a huge hire this summer specifically for this type of stuff with their AGM. And why is his name completely escaping me right now?
I'm also looking it up for what it's worth. It'll...
He worked for Central Registry for years and has been involved with the league on this side of things for even longer. The Avs went out and made a specific hire.
Andrew Wilson at assistant GM to fill in this type of role.
Maybe Wagner didn't get a paper transaction as a seniority thing. Again, to me, if this truly is paper transaction, then every last dollar and cent counts. And that's the reason for all of this.
I think it's the credit card scenario, though. Like getting them closer to the cap ceiling, it was Wagner's number that was going to do it.
Right.
I think Kovalenko or Ivans would have been too much.
I think you're right. I think that would have put them over. Which again, I do just find it funny. And this is the type of stuff that, like, if this is truly what we're talking about here, this is something the NHL just needs to clean up. Like, why do we need to do all of this tap dancing? If we can tell you what the final roster is going to be and how we're going to get there, why do they need to be here by a certain time? Like, I get it around the trade deadline where players have to be on the roster at a certain time in order to qualify to be on an AHL roster. That makes sense to me. This doesn't.
You know, there's a part of me that very humbly respects the strategy that's involved here and how they've given themselves an advantage over NHL clubs who might not have a cap expert on staff to be able to maximize savings on a daily basis like that. But then Vegas gets away with Leonard, and I don't know if I believe in strategy, but I can respect what they're doing, and I can respect that I don't fully understand it, and it's a little embarrassing.
So again, if it truly is less than $50K that the Avs have between where they're at right now and the current salary cap, then what you just said would make sense. Wagner at $775, Ivan's $845 would have been too much. Kovalenko's $896 would have definitely been too much.
Here's the right puzzle piece.
It's
to
the right
get them
puzzle
under
piece.
the cap.
See,
but close.
And we just need to talk through this. That's really what it was.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we just needed to work our way through this because, again, I think it's easy for us to just be like, oh, that's a nothing move. They'll be back tomorrow.
Well, yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that I thought I knew everything about hockey, but this was some Oompa Loompa Alice in Wonderland nonsense. I'd agree with that. I would agree with that.
Stressed.
I really did. I thought I was getting a see, and this was the thought that really threw my brain into a tizzy. Thought you didn't accrue cap when the team was making use of LTIR. Again, I'm fully, after everything that we've read through, the different things that we've seen out there, the money that we've added up, I really do think this is purely a placeholder for 24 hours. I don't think this is about accruing cap space.
I don't think they were planning on being
Right.
able to because, well,
Right.
I mean, just Tucker Pullman by itself. It's a guaranteed player on LTIR
Yeah.
out the gate. That's sort of kind of like, I have felt that moving on from Brindstrom and turning that into a pick has been a great transaction.
Me too.
But there, there has to be some reason that Vancouver wants a part in this as well.
Right.
Obviously, they're going to utilize Brindstrom as a depth piece for the American League and potentially call him up. But past that, I think this is the possible. Like, all right, they give up accruing cap space because they have to put this player on LTIR.
Yeah. I think we just have to wait and see who's at morning skate on Wednesday.
think that's true, Keaton.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Megan and I will be there.
And Kovalenko will be too.
And we're imagining Nikolai Kovalenko will be there as well. But okay, this was a longer emergency pod than I was planning. Does anyone have a link for the cap rules? No. The Avs had to go out and hire someone on a 6-figure salary just to figure it out, just because there aren't any cap rules. I don't know. Like I said, when I get a little bit more clarity, I'll make sure to put out a post. Megan and I will be tracking this here over the next 24 hours, see what happens. So don't expect. All right, shout out to our boy Rudo here. The napkin math puts the Avs cap hit with this roster at 87,937,500. That is 62.5K under the salary cap. The difference between Chris Wagner and Ivan's salary, $70,000. So there it is. That's why Chris Wagner and not Ivan or Nikolai Kovalenko. Chris Wagner will sit on the roster till tomorrow. And apparently, since tomorrow is some weird arbitrary date where the NHL is okay with you doing all this, they'll be back in Vegas on Wednesday. And that young starting lineup that we saw this morning should be who's in T-Mobile Arena come Wednesday night. Fair?
Kovalenko will be there.
Kovalenko will be there. Well, you know what, Megan? You are right. We'll leave it there. Kovalenko will be there. We'll be there. Thank you guys for jumping back on with us and letting us just talk through this. Like I said, this broke all kinds of podcast rules and like talk show rules, but we got there. We worked it out. We figured it out.
Like, I know there were some people who had figured it out much sooner in the process, but I just hope the people that were figuring it out along the way with us can appreciate it.
And have fun. They didn't figure it out earlier. They were guessing. They were just guessing. We brought our guessing to the people. That's going to do it. Did Jay jump back there? Yep, Jay's back there making all kinds of stuff happen for us today. That's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks.